Hello there, Crafty Doer. Jessica Michaels here. Welcome to the Crafty Doings Mixed Media Paper Crafts. Welcome if you are new. This video is for Ranger Ink, and I will be creating in an art journal, layering up a few mediums, and using the 49 and Market the Looking Glass collection. So grab a comfy chair, grab all your crafty things, and let's get into the Crafty Doings. The ink pads I color match to this collection are Frosty, Pink Sands, Pink Lady, and Lavender Kisses. And to break my blank page, I am going to Simply Ink blend a couple of colors on there using my ink blending tool. I like this dome foam because it gives you a little bit of not leverage, but when you apply it onto the page, you don't get just this big old blob of ink because of the curvage to the dome. These are one of my favorites. My other favorite are Simon Hurley's minis. If you haven't checked those out, I highly encourage you to go take a look at those. So after I put down a little bit of Pink Lady, I'm going to go in with Pink Sands. And there's really no rhyme or reason to this part. I want to make sure that on the upper right hand corner, I really saturate the page with as much ink as I can. Once I fade it out a little bit towards the edges, I'm going to get my distress sprayer and spritz the entire thing. This is just going to move all that ink around, and I'm going to pick up my journal and move it around to help that ink spread even further, ensuring that I dry that first layer before applying Lavender Kisses, because I don't want to blend these two colors together. So I am going to focus on the outer edge of my ink blending when I go in with the Lavender Kisses for that reason, because I don't want to blend and make a completely different color. You'll notice that I created an area that is more pigmented right here. That is user error and not these ink blending tools that I was literally just raving about. What happened was I didn't dry a few water droplets, and so the water absorbed the pigment a lot more. That's why I stress to dry your layers. So once again, I'm going to reach for my distress sprayer and spray droplets and also just mist and help that Lavender Kisses slightly blend with the other colors. And the super simple technique gives like a watercolor effect, as if painting these colors with a paintbrush. And I love that these dye inks have that ability. The next step is to grab a little bit of texture paste and this gorgeous lace stencil by Tim Holtz, and I'm going to add some lacy stenciling to my page. I'm going to focus on the outer edge, and I know you've heard me say this a few times already. I guess that's a theme on this page today, but I'm going to try to translate my vision onto my page with it, which is having lace kind of hanging off the edges of my ink blending. It may or may not turn out that way, but that is what I see in my head, and we'll see how I'm able to translate that on my page. Also, I'm going to add a little bit of stenciling on the other page, just slightly, because if you don't follow me, or if you do, know that I like to have my design spill over to the opposite page so that you don't have like just a completely blank page over there. Because I do only like to journal single pages for a couple reasons, to try to avoid junking up my art journal because it gets so big because of all of the ephemera and tape foam that I use, but also because I think it's just such a pretty visual to have this main focus on one page and then just kind of have it slightly spill over to the next. Kind of draws your eye back and forth. So now that my texture paste is dry, which is opaque matte, by the way, which means it dries, it doesn't dry clear or shiny, I'm going to go in with some Fossil. and slightly ink blend that texture paste. You'll notice how it kind of highlights everything. So it's not a completely vibrant color that stands out. I want to leave that to my ink blending that I've created. And I'm also going to add fossil to the edges just to kind of carry that color throughout, and it's not a stand alone color. But I do love this effect. I love how the lace now pops out with like those highlights and shadows using fossil. It's such a pretty and unique color. I think I have yet to see anything like this fossil color before. So now that I have that step complete, the next step is to dive into the rub-on transfers. Now, if you haven't already played with 49 and Market rub-on transfers, you are missing out. And I know I've said this before, because they're so different than what you were probably used to way back when rub-on transfers first came out. These seriously transfer on like butter. And most of the time I use my nail or like my finger to rub them right on there. So I'm going to select this pretty cluster of like hand or stitching and a little washi tape. And there's some like paint splatters and a staple even, which I think is super cute little detail. And again, just use my fingernail to rub it right on and peel the backing right off. If there's anything that didn't stick, I can just rub that right on, and anything excess left over, I can choose where I want to rub that on. So I'm going to leave this purple stitch over here because I may or may not want to use that, but if I put it elsewhere, I'm going to forget about it. So this is a perfect spot for it. I already went into the laser cut elements and I selected just a few. This particular piece is actually from the ephemera pack. And what I like to do with all my ephemera and laser cut elements is to ink blend the edges, and for like a grungy kind of distress look. And my go-to is cappuccino. So once I have ink blended all of my ephemera, I'm actually going to go back in to my lavender kisses and push it down on my glass working surface. Spritz some water on, dilute it with water, and lift it with my paintbrush to do a little bit of splattering. I will tell you, I'm not happy about how those splatters are looking. And I want to say it's because the Lavender Kisses is kind of on the lighter side of the spectrum. So I'm going to have to go back in there and fix that. I don't know how yet, but what helps me envision the final look is to kind of start setting up what my design is going to look like. And I decided that I'm going to go back in with my ink blending tool and ink blend some of that Lavender Kisses right on top of where I splattered. Then I'm just going to repeat the process as I did the first time I started ink blending all of these colors on my page, which is spritz it with the distress sprayer, adding some droplets by slightly pulling the trigger, drawing that layer, and then going through pink sands and pink lady. So not only will it hide those splatters that I'm not happy with, but it'll also intensify and draw those colors out a little bit, because the ephemera that I want to add on top happens to be a little bit larger than the amount of ink blending that I did. So now that I'm satisfied with the ink blending, I'm going to start adhering some of these pieces. And I really like to use Dina Wakley's media glue. It dries fairly quickly, not super quick, so you still have some wiggle room. but it works fantastic. So I'm going to start layering up these pieces that I selected. And what I was thinking when I was selecting these pieces was I want journaling vibe, but I also want those unexpected elements like the huge mushroom and the cliff with the grass or the moss and the mushrooms. And I want to be able to draw the design out to the left, top left, and also to the right bottom. And I'm going to do that by using some vines. To continue that odd vision that I had for this journal page, I'm going to add a tag and a key and a couple of other little things down around this rub-on transfer and just kind of build a little cluster down there. So I had a Frosty ink pad, but I didn't get to use it. And I want that contrast color on my journal page. So instead, to make that color really pop, I'm going to go in with the re-inker instead of smooshing down my ink pen onto my glass working surface. And all I need to do is dilute it slightly with water and pick some up with my paintbrush and add it to the edges of my journal. If the ink doesn't drip down on its own, I can always get my distress sprayer and spritz it with water. The paintbrush, I can move the ink where I want it to drip down, generally speaking, because it's a mixed media. You can't really tell it what to do. And as my good friend Tim Holtz says, you get what you get and you don't throw a fit. So I'm going to do the same thing across the edges of certain areas of the journal. And then I'm going to get some on my paintbrush and go in on the edges of my die cut elements. And the idea here is not to completely saturate the journal page with Frosty. The idea is just to kind of spread that color, like pops of that color here and there. And what I'm loving about this color combination after adding Frosty is that the page is looking a little bit more enchanting, which is what I was envisioning for this page. And it helps when I add these extra tiny details like the ladybug and the little sleeping mouse and the frog. Like those are things, unexpected things next to, you know, some washing tape or note paper, even this magnifying glass and key and tag and staple. Like it's just all very odd things to be mixed or next to one another. So I want to keep that grunge antique kind of enchanting look. So I'm going to go in with some sunrise and dilute it with water on my glass working surface. With my paintbrush, I'm going to go in on the edges and add a little bit, and you'll see that it starts to look kind of like rust a little bit. And I love that. I feel like it goes with this vibe. Once that layer is dry, I'm going to ink blend sunrise on the edges, specifically where that sunrise drips more into the page. This will just kind of help highlight that and enhance that. And also it'll help just make it more vibrant. Once I am done ink blending the edges, I'm going to move on to the next step. What I want to do now is, with the knowledge that diluting ink from the ink pad onto a glassworking surface will not be as vibrant as using re-inker. I'm going to put a little bit of Frosty down, dilute it with water, and lift it with my paintbrush to pull down the Frosty re-inker that I dripped earlier on my page down into a wisp or like a fade. And the way I'm going to be able to accomplish that is by diluting the dye ink as much as I can. And then I'm also going to go ahead and just paint some of the white space. That way it really looks like the ink is leaking over, or what's the word, is really fading into the page. And since I have Frosty out, I'm gonna ink blend the edges of my title and subtitle here, and I'm not going to leave it blue because I want to bring out that fossil and sunrise that is on the edges of my page. I'm going to go back in with cappuccino and grunge these babies up. To adhere my sentiment, I'm going to use scrapbook adhesive foam squares to add a little dimension to my page. I'm going to do that on both the title and subtitle. When these squares are too big, I go ahead and slice it right down the middle while it's on the backing, and easily have half of what I need to fit a tiny space. Now for the final touch, I'm going to use Dilution's white paint and very lightly spritz it with water so that I can pick it up and it'll have more movement to splatter. I'm going to focus on splattering right on the elements, the die cut elements on the top and a tiny bit on the bottom before adding my sentiment. Okay, so one final little addition, I couldn't resist using this pen on my page. I think it's just the idea of bringing all these odd elements together that I couldn't resist. Here's the final look to this page. I truly do hope that you were inspired today to reach for your mixed media and create on your paper projects. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more tips, tricks, and mixed media encouragement. All of the products used in this project will be linked in the description box below. Head over to the Ranger blog under project tutorials for more of my art journaling pages. Thank you so much for watching. Until the next crafty doings.